yogis. Today I want to talk to you about the word Vinyasa. If you've ever been to a yoga class or if you're planning on taking a yoga class, you're going to hear the word Vinyasa at some point in time. First, you might see it on the schedule. You might see the class listed as a Vinyasa class. Or when you come into a class and you're in the middle of taking the practice, at some point, chances are your instructor is going to say, take a Vinyasa. If you've never been to a yoga class, you're not going to know what the words take a Vinyasa means. And as you look around at all the other people in the class, you're going to notice that they're moving and knowing exactly what to do all together. So this video is to help you understand what take a Vinyasa or take a flow means. So first of all, the word Vinyasa means arranging something in a special way. When an instructor is putting together a class or a practice, the instructor will think about arranging that class in a special way. Usually a Vinyasa class is a flowy type of class where you're moving from one pose into another pose. It doesn't mean you don't hold poses, but it usually means that there's a nice progression from one pose to another pose, rather than just having you down on the floor and all of a sudden standing up and then all of a sudden back down on the floor in a back bend. The instructor will put some thought into how those poses connect with each other. Sometimes you'll notice the class progresses to harder and harder poses as the practice goes on. And sometimes you'll just notice that the class has a certain purpose or you're working to a certain type of pose. And so all the poses connect in a nice way to work you into that peak pose near the end of class. Each instructor tends to do their yoga practice a little bit differently, so I always encourage people to try lots of different yoga practices. But basically, that's how a yoga practice will usually show up. But when you show up and you go to take your yoga practice, you're going to hear the words take a Vinyasa. And if you're new, you don't know what that means. So I will show you what that means. But first of all, what I want you to know about that point in time in the practice, it's usually a short amount of time. It might be anywhere from about 10 seconds to 30 seconds, where basically the instructor is saying to you, do what you want during this time, or make this time your own. And you have the absolute freedom to do that. You don't have to do a traditional yoga flow. You can do any pose or stretch that you want. You can make the practice easier or harder. Sometimes you show up to a yoga practice and it's not what you thought it was going to be at all, and you're feeling really tired, or maybe it's too easy and you need to make it harder. Using your Vinyasa flow is a perfect opportunity to help make the class what you thought it would be. So just know that during that time, you have absolute freedom to do what you want. Let's talk about what the 4 poses are. When your instructor says, take a Vinyasa, take a flow, or sometimes they'll say, travel in your own way to your downward facing dog, something like that, just giving you the freedom to put in the poses that you want. They're usually talking about 4 specific poses in order. Number 1, high plank. Number 2, Chaturanga Dandasana. Number 3, upward facing dog. And number 4, downward facing dog. And these poses are meant to flow one into another with a connection of your breath using specific inhales or exhales for each pose. So let's do a very traditional yoga flow first. Let's pretend that your instructor has you in a low lunge, okay? And you've probably been working really hard, sweating, doing something really challenging, and then your instructor will say, take a Vinyasa. They're asking you to get into high plank first. So, tucking toes, coming into your high plank. Make sure that you have hips in line with the shoulders and the body in a nice long line. A tendency in plank is to sag, so make sure that you're not piking up or sagging down, but holding a nice high plank, shoulders stacked over your wrists. This is your inhale. So wherever you were, if you were in a downward dog or whatever position you were in, you will inhale your way to your high plank. Then you're going to exhale to Chaturanga Dandasana, which is basically a tricep push-up with your elbows close to your side. You'll inhale, come up to upward facing dog. I'm rolling purposefully onto the tops of my feet with my knees and hips floating above the mat, drawing my shoulders down and lifting my chest up and through my arms. And then you'll exhale your way back to downward facing dog. And here you have some freedom to pedal your feet, to move around, to stretch and sway. So let's put them all together the way that you would do it in an actual yoga class. Just for easiness, let's pretend we were in downward facing dog and your instructor said, take a vinyasa. You would inhale to plank, exhale to chaturanga, inhale, upward facing dog, and exhale, downward facing dog. Couple common mistakes. Chaturanga Dandasana is not only hard to say, it's hard to do. It's a strengthening pose, which is usually why your instructor will be slipping this vinyasa flow in. Works your body with a lot of strength and adds some of that power into your practice. So no matter what else you're doing, as soon as your instructor says take a vinyasa, here comes the power. But the Chaturanga Dandasana can sometimes be done poorly. Actually, pretty commonly can be done poorly by either keeping the butt too high and arching the back, or by letting the body sag, and I'll see people come to the floor and then they'll lift up into a really, really cranked out upward facing dog. And I think you can tell from just looking at me do those poses. Those are not good for your shoulders, they're not good for your back. So watch me do Chaturanga Dandasana. Straight on, high plank. Notice how my hands are shoulder width apart. I'm gonna exhale and keep my body in a straight line and just bring my shoulders to elbow level, keeping the elbows close to the body and then lifting up to up dog. From your up dog, it's okay to set your knees down and come back like I am. Let's try it one more time, the whole vinyasa flow. When you transition into your up dog this time, can you make sure that you're not in a cobra? So we don't want the front of the pelvis, the front of the thighs, or the knees to touch the mat. When we move up into our back bend, we want to just have top of the feet and palms of the hands on the floor. And that's up dog. And believe it or not, in that way, it's a much more gentle, soft transition for your lower back. It's a much easier, gentle back bend than cobra pose with your pelvis on the ground, which is why it's really important and crucial that you use up dog. And when you're in your up dog, try and use nice active legs. Press down through the tops of your feet and don't over squeeze your buns. So let's try it one more time. From your downward facing dog, inhale forward, activate your core, high plank. Exhale, stay strong through the core, push off those toes, Chaturanga Dandasana. Inhale, just come to the tops of your feet, let your knees and hips hover. Upward facing dog, draw your shoulders down. There's no need to look super high here, just keep your chin nice and level. Exhale, draw those thigh bones back, downward facing dog. Now that's a traditional flow. If you tried that with me a couple of times, it feels really difficult, then let's level that down just a little bit. And trust me, it's just a little bit. Still plenty of work to a slightly easier version. We all have those days. I do too, even when I'm teaching, where I use the easier version of the vinyasa because it's just too much for me that day, or I'm not in the mood for it, whatever. Okay, so from your downward facing dog, inhale, come forward to your high plank, place the knees down on the mat. Now notice though that even though I have my knees down, I'm not letting the belly sag. So I'm staying active through the core. And if I tucked my toes and lifted up, everything else would be right where it is, right? High plank on the knees. Exhale. We're gonna set our body all the way down this time because it's a nice transition for the shoulders. It's okay for us to come all the way to the floor. And rather than pushing into our bigger back bend of up dog, we'll just take a soft cobra here. Here we do let the knees and the hips touch the floor. Exhale, downward facing dog, and feel free to just travel your way there. Nice and easy, nice and slow, peeling the knees up off the floor to your downward facing dog. So just a lighter vinyasa connection all together using the breath. Inhale, high plank knees on the floor. Exhale all the way down, low chaturanga. Inhale, easy cobra. Exhale, downward facing dog. All right. Now, what if you happen to be pregnant? I just taught you the little bit softer version of the vinyasa, but that I also taught you laying on your belly. And if you have a belly out here that you don't want to be laying on, that's not much help. So let's talk about what if you happen to be pregnant. You can do all kinds of different combinations of these, by the way. These are just the 4 traditional poses. So expecting moms, if you don't like what I'm showing you, you can kind of start to make up your own and just experiment with what you want to do. But if it were me, I would inhale, come down to a tabletop or high plank on the knees. Exhale, press back to a child's pose. Inhale, come back through either to that high plank on the knees or maybe just a soft little up dog, lifting up off the tops of my feet, yeah? And then pulling back, downward facing dog as I exhale. All right, one last set or variation to talk about, and that is, what if you need more power than a traditional vinyasa is offering you? What if push-ups are really easy for you? What if you have a really strong core? Or maybe you just showed up to class one day and the practice happens to be really gentle and you were hoping it would be like a good, hard, sweaty workout, and it's not. Well, you can level up your vinyasa, and if your instructor is offering you vinyasas, or if they're holding you in downward facing dog for a long time and you see the opportunity, you can sneak a vinyasa in there really quick. So let's talk about leveling up your vinyasa to a harder variation. All right, just for easiness sake, let's pretend we're in downward facing dog. Or your instructor has you resting here and you don't feel like resting, or your instructor offers you a vinyasa. You're going to inhale to a one-legged plank, right? Holding that leg parallel to the floor. Exhale to a one-legged chaturanga, still hovering that leg. Inhale, drop onto the tops of both of your feet, up dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Let's try one more hard variation, and that is to sneak in a push-up in the middle of your Chaturanga Dandasana, coming right back up to your high plank, and then back down and through to your upward facing dog. Yes! Okay, I'm officially out of breath and sweaty now after that one. So you can hear it. Adding in that push-up makes a huge difference. And you don't have to do just one. It could be 2 or 3 or 4 before you finally transition into your upward facing dog. You can do push-ups, 2 or 3 or 4 on one leg. Everybody has a different level. Everybody has a different body. Everybody feels a different way when they show up to all do the same practice together. So just remember, when your instructor says, take a vinyasa or take a flow or travel your own way to your downward facing dog, this is your opportunity, a reminder to yourself that you're hitting the reset button. You're connecting your mind to your body. What does my body need today? What kind of practice was I hoping to get? What type of intention did I have for this practice today? And then making that vinyasa time your own. I hope this helps you be successful when you show up to your next yoga practice. Try that vinyasa, work on it often. You'll do it in the sun salutation and you'll do it repetitively throughout a yoga class. So keep at it, you'll get better at it. Hope this helps and have a great day. Thanks, yogis. Namaste.